The Two and Out CFL podcast with Travis Currah and Sheldon Jones starts now.
Look, I'm usually a pretty smiley guy, but it's Labor Day, baby, so I'm even more smiley. It is the second biggest weekend in the CFL, or is opening week a little bit bigger? I feel bad that there are three teams not included in Labor Day this year, but man, we've got the rivalry games going starting on Sunday in Regina. I'm excited for that. But Sheldon Jones, did you have Taylor Swift getting a ring before the Ticats on your betting sheet?
Unfortunately for Ticats fans, yeah. Like I didn't in a while. Yeah. Happy for them. Hopefully Zach Caleros is a groomsman. That would be cool. We can get that in the CFL news cycle for a while when that happens.
Yeah, can we get her playing the Grey Cup before the Super Bowl? If she did both within like 4 months, that would be pretty crazy.
Word on the street is there's already been a lot of teases that she's doing the Super Bowl this year. So
I'm rattled because the Super Bowl's in San Francisco. My favorite band's from San Francisco, so there's been some Metallica rumors, and that the NFL would go back to the rock, which they haven't done for a while. But how do you deny the might that is the Swifties? Just stay out of the way, let them do their thing, and yeah, there we go.
Funny thing about Taylor Swift is while I was away on assignment at Newton Lake last weekend, which sorry about my connection issues for certain parts of that podcast there, but so is my wife's family and their kind of other family all having a reunion of sorts, and there was a supper, and they had this trivia game after supper where it paired up all the kids, like the adult children of the aunts and uncles who had these cottages up there. And Tammy and I were placed on a team, and they were all these questions about their family. So, of course, I really didn't know all that stuff. So I was just kind of sitting there like, hey, I get to learn about my wife's family. This is awesome. But then there was a question. There's two that I had. So one was, obviously, this is Manitoba, so... And I don't know if this was just a zing at me because I was there, but it was a question about, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers and all the Grey Cups and how many Saskatchewan won and all that blah, blah, blah. But then there was a question about the Taylor Swift and what her tour was called. They said that they made that question for the little kids so that they could get an answer right. And that was the only one other than the radio.
That was the one for you.
Yeah, so I felt nice and young in that moment.
Oh, I love that. We got news today from the CFLPA that they have partnered with Lids to launch a custom headwear line featuring CFL players. We've only seen the Stavros Katsantonis hat, or at least part of it, so far, but this is really cool that the CFLPA has been able to make this deal with Lids to get more CFL gear out on shelves.
Yeah, I know that, and it wasn't the CFLPA who did this, but I know it was the CFL who did it back in the day with, I think it was 2 or 3 seasons, because I remember I had a Tyrone Brackenridge hat, and I had a Ricky Foley, the watermelon brim hat. Like, that was probably my favorite hat I've ever had. So it's cool that this is happening, and, with the sales kind of going right to the CFLPA, probably that's pretty cool as well, too. And then also the Turf Traditions
this line looks good, man.
It looks good, and I have a little tweet if anyone wants to check it out. Sheldon Jones 83 on Twitter. But I broke down the price of the hats per store and how it's ridiculous that the Rider one is, of course, more expensive because of higher tax. But also for Elks fans, 25% off in your store right now on everything. So maybe is a good time to get something, some Elks merch if you're looking.
I gotta look at these hats again, but right out of, or actually all the gear, but right off the bat, I really like the Montreal gear. I thought their gear looked awesome.
Montreal and Toronto's were the ones that kind of jumped off the page at me because I love that old boat logo. But yeah, the Alouettes logo great. And then, unfortunately, a little bit of a blunder that we've seen because the Ottawa Red Blacks went with the Roughriders, but they have it as Roughriders one word instead of the two words. So there's a little controversy about that.
All right.
Understandably, because they were not the Rough Riders, they were the Rough Riders.
Yes, there are some American listeners to the show. You might not be aware that there were two teams by the name of Rough Riders in the league.
Concurrently.
Which I think is an all-time... If you look at the history, they were both in like different rugby unions, I think, and then the league came together. But the Ottawa one had a space in it. So that was the big difference. With the NFL starting next week, there's been some movement with them getting down to their 53-man rosters. So several CFL players getting let go here, or names that we're familiar with. Now, Taylor Elgersma, the Wilfrid Laurier quarterback last year, was in the Vanier Cup, the Heck Crichton winner. I actually thought he might have a chance at sticking with Green Bay, but it looks like he's been released. He's going to work out for the New York Giants here. He is a Bombers draft pick, so he's going to play out his NFL options before coming to Canada. Adjo, released by the Indianapolis Colts, Saskatchewan Roughrider last year. He goes unclaimed on waivers, so we'll see if he takes a PR spot with them. Ontario Wilson was with the Bombers last year. He cleared waivers as well. Ralph Hawley, he has joined the Cleveland Browns practice roster. He was a Toronto Argonaut last year, and Curtis Rourke has been placed on the San Francisco 49ers non-football injured list. So just some names that we are pretty familiar with. There is an NFL name that has signed with a CFL team. Actually, two of them looking to return to the league, but we will get to those as we get to the games. As we preview Labor Day weekend in the CFL. Starting in Regina, where the Rough Riders are 5.5-point favorites over the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. The over-under set at 51.5. Now, some of the biggest news in Saskatchewan this week, Sheldon, is the kicking situation. It does appear that Campbell Fair was kicking around Mosaic Stadium on Wednesday. Brett Lothar was not. They noted it as a personal reason. So whether they're just giving him the day off, or maybe there actually is something going on there.
There is actually something going on.
Oh, okay.
So he and his wife are expecting the birth of their child.
Oh, okay. Well, so it's happy news.
So happy news. Congrats to them. Also, could be a perfect time for him to maybe sit out a game and try to reset, because obviously there's other things on his mind. Rightfully so, with an addition to the family. But it looks like Campbell Fair probably will be making his Rough Riders debut.
Hey, so we'll see. No better place to do it than at a sold-out Mosaic Stadium. They're expecting the biggest crowd in Mosaic Stadium history because they started to sell the standing room tickets. It should be electric. It should be hot, so make sure you mix in the waters in between the whatever else you're partaking in. That'll be really helpful. Or as our buddies from Winnipeg do, they mix the vodka in the sports drink. So you're getting the electrolytes at the same time, which is really genius if you think about it.
It is smart. I've been actually drinking a lot of sport drinks lately, trying to get some electrolytes in me, and so. Yeah, that might be a good thing to do after work commences on Sunday and it's time to have fun before the Rider game.
Now, some other injury situations to watch with the green and white, including a couple veterans, one being Jamarcus Hardrick, who hasn't practiced this week. That would be a big loss for the offensive line. And also Marcus Sales, who has played pretty darn good this season. He was a game-time decision, I guess, against Calgary, but he hasn't practiced this week. I just feel like if he was a game-time decision, against the Stamps, maybe there is a good chance he'll be back on the field in the secondary for the Riders.
I hope so, but it's a little bit confusing because the game time decision was listed as illness, and today on the practice report, his designation for not practicing was hip, I believe. So it seems like he's somehow got an actual injury instead of just an illness, or unless that was improperly disclosed, I don't know. But obviously, not having Sales in the lineup last week for the Riders was a big loss. It forced a lot of changes on the defense, and then Nelson Lacombo gets hurt, and it looks like he's not going to be playing as well this game. So they're going up a quarterback who at times can be pretty surgical, and if you're down these players, that's not a good starting point.
It does appear that Trevor Harris is going to be fine and playing against the Bombers. Sheldon, there's not another storyline at play here? No conspiracies with Trevor Harris? Were they just trying to get him? Some people seem to think that there's an extra injury or two going on with number 7. And that's maybe why he came out of the game against Calgary.
Well, he said on the post-game press conference that he was having some issues with calf cramping, and that's why he was a little wobbly. So, if that's the case, he's in a lot better shape than I am. But I am, I get my fair share of calf cramps. So I'm
sympathetic to the calf cramp.
Yeah, I understand how they feel and how they can, make you move weird ways when they come out of craziness. So, understandable, but a little bit suspect when it's after getting rocked. But hopefully that it's good to go. Like obviously the Riders know that this is probably like as must win of as a game you can be when you're an 8-2 team halfway through the season. So I understand the fire for him to be out there, but you have to understand that there is another half of a season to go. So hopefully the team is being smart about this. Hopefully he's being smart about this, and hopefully the offensive line can play a lot better to protect him this game.
A big return, pun intended, for the Riders could be Super Mario Alford as well. The return game has struggled without Super Mario, I would say, is a fair assessment, and he had a pretty good start to his season as well. So if he can get right back on the right track against the Bombers, that will be big for the green and white. But it is pretty funny, Sheldon. As soon as people started anointing the Riders as the real deal, they have that loss against the Stampeders, and all of a sudden, their schedule this month looks very difficult, including this one with the Bombers, the next one against the Bombers, and then they also have a Montreal team that, if they get healthy in a couple weeks, are going to present quite the challenge to the Riders too.
Yeah, I think even before, like when we were back to the Hamilton game, we were kind of looking ahead at the schedule, just understanding that the Riders may have had a pretty relatively easy start of the schedule, but the middle bulk of it was very difficult, and the Riders were able to win the vast majority of those early games, especially, they've won every game not against a Calgary Stampeder team. So, they've faced adversity with injuries. They've had stellar play. But these are a tough stretch of games coming up, and it's hard after seeing them be so dominant against BC and Hamilton, and just to see them lay an egg against Calgary. That's just frustrating as a Rider fan to see, but it's all about the bounce back, and sometimes good teams need to lose. They need to have adversity for them to be able to continue the success in the season and leading up into the playoffs. So hopefully for them this is what they needed, and they can come out in a big way and kind of go on another run here.
The Bombers are dealing with their share of injuries as well. Nick Dembski exited last week's game. It looks like he's a possibility to play on Sunday, but the Bombers bringing in some interesting receivers as well, names that are familiar to CFL fans. First of all, it does look like the receiver Dalton Schoen could be returning in the Labor Day Classic as well, seeing that he was practicing with the ones Wednesday in Winnipeg. The Bombers have signed Kyron Moore, most recently with the Edmonton Elks. I think he had about 800 yards in 2023. He was 4 yards short of 1,000 with the Riders in 2019. Swerve is an interesting ad for the Bombers. They've also signed Cam Eccles, a receiver who spent last season with the Stampeders, had almost 400 receiving yards. If I remember correctly, it was like week 1. He had one of the catches of the year as well. That means that Jareth Stearns is going to be missing this week, and it also looks like Dylan Mitchell is going to be bumped back off the roster. So the Bombers making some pretty interesting signings here, and some guys that I think can probably still contribute in the CFL.
Yeah, like I think Swerve can slot in and kind of do what Stearns is doing. He's a smaller bodied, quick receiver, so he might be to do some of those athletic plays that they've been calling on Stearns to do lately. And I actually think the Cam Eccles signing is a really good one. He may be a little bit underrated, in my opinion. I think he's a nice big body receiver, and I've kind of liked what I've seen out of him in the past, so I'm glad to see him getting another chance. And then in Dembski, yeah, like if he's kind of like the same as Trevor. I think if he's close to being ready to go, he'll go. He always loves to show up for games against the Riders, his former team, and he's kind of been like that Achilles heel to the Riders ever since, I'll say this, that he left, but kind of in this new Mosaic era, he's kind of been the rider killer like Kritz Getzlaf was in the past to like the Calgary Stampeders. So yeah, Collaros has weapons, and even with these two, new signees, like we'll have to see if they're able to get on the field and contribute right away.
Reddick Cramdy has not practiced for the Bombers. I'd say a member of that Bomber defense that's pretty good at drawing misconduct penalties out of the opposing offense. He is a pest on the field, a hard hitter, and tough to deal with on that Winnipeg Blue Bomber defense. Now, I look at the history of this Labor Day Classic, and there have been some crazy moments between the Riders and Bombers. The Riders actually historically have a wild record here. 38-21, the win-loss record for the Riders against the Bombers Labor Day weekend. However, the Bombers have won 3 of the last 4. Last year winning 35-33. 2023, the Riders did win 32-30. So a couple high-scoring ones in a row, but the ones before that, there was like a 19-17, there was a 23-8, 20-18. Are we going to see, one of those, playoff type matchups where every yard is, tough to get? Or are you going to see something like the last couple years where there's going to be some high flying affairs that come right down to the wire?
Yeah, I'm not sure, because both teams have been very quick to score, but also at the same time they've been having slow starts that kind of take that away. So I'm honestly not really sure what to make of this game. Winnipeg, it's tough for them to always come into to Mosaic. I shouldn't say tough for them, but it's a hostile environment for them. Even though the Bomber fans lately have been traveling well, and there will be lots of them there. And then our buddy Neely told us that, ever since he's been going to games, the Bombers have only ever won one time when they haven't, or when they've been the underdog. So, and that's a long time, but I just don't know what to make of it. They've had an extra 2 or 3 days rest. They get an extra practice day here than the Riders do. Yeah, the Riders have been good against the run except against Calgary. And last weekend we saw Brady Oliveira actually be a little bit more featured like he should be by Ryan Hogan in that offense. So they're going to try to do that, and so that could potentially make the game a little bit slower to start out with if they're going to try to establish that running game, and especially the Riders are going to try to do it too with AJ Ouellette. So I see a chess match game on one hand, but at the other hand, I also see two teams that really need this win and might just, try to just shoot the guns right away and try to get out into a really hot start.
It is the 60th edition of the game. The Bombers, lately, it feels like they get up and then let teams fight back. Ottawa, on the other hand, I know they're not playing this weekend. By the way, it should be Ottawa hosting Montreal on Friday night, and it should be Montreal hosting Ottawa on Thanksgiving. There's no reason that they can't have both of those games going on.
Yeah.
So...
Why would they have a triple header next week and not just have that game this week? It's stupid.
I agree. Friday night, I think Friday night should be all season until the playoffs.
It's the flagship. It's like the Monday Night Football. Like, come on.
It's cliche, but this game's going to be won in the trenches. We definitely know that. Can the Bombers have another 200 yards from scrimmage game for Brady O? And can the Riders get to the quarterback? They weren't able to get to VA, and they better be getting to Zach if they want to win this game. Zach had 87% completion percentage last week, and if they're going to be playing that sort of zone and not being able to pressure him, it could be a tough day at the office for the Roughriders. But that is Sunday evening, the Labor Day weekend game in Regina. Then we go to the Monday. You know what? Up until last week, now the Argo offense, they're fun to watch. Let's look at this right now, because on one hand, their rushing totals are abysmal. Nick Arbuckle leads the team in rushing at this point of the season, but he also leads the CFL in passing. Last week, he threw for 430 against BC. He's got over 300 passing yards in 5 straight games, 11 TDs to 2 interceptions over that stretch as well. He's thrown a touchdown pass in every game in 2025. Hey, the Grey Cup MVP last year, the record's not good in Toronto, but man, it's not because of Nick Arbuckle.
He's having, what people are saying now, an MOP worthy, first half of the season, which I'm not sure he would actually get the votes. Bo didn't get the votes last year with the team not being as great, so I'm not sure if he would hear either, but it's remarkable. And, yeah. I don't know what more to say. It's weird. Their defense has been getting up a lot of points. They're not rushing, like you said, but they're just, so explosive when it comes to, Coxie early on, and now Hergslow, and like having players like Sluka show up and just come out of nowhere and score touchdowns in all these different kick return and inter ways. Like, it's just, they've been a very fun, exciting team to watch, and they're matching up against another team that's actually been really fun to watch, offensively this year as well.
Jake Herslow, in his last 3 games, 4 touchdowns. Like, the guy's on absolute fire. He had 2 of them against the BC Lions last week, 149 yards receiving. And Sheldon, that offense is about to get more explosive because Mackay Polk is back with the Argos. He had 1,000 yards receiving last year, 5 touchdowns. They've got, I think, some tough decisions to make. Who's not going to be playing? Like, Brissett and Mittal are Canadian. Like, does this mean that the veteran Tavares Daniels might be on the outside looking in?
Could be. This could be a time of the year where you can kind of have him sit for a little bit and stash him on the 1 game injury list, or the 1 day roster deletion, and kind of just make it a load management situation and kind of keep him healthy for the playoffs if you want to do that. But or it might take Mackay more than a few practices to get back in. So maybe he doesn't slot in until next game. But yeah, getting another weapon like that on back on the offense is just incredible for the Argos. It truly is sad that there's only one ball to go around because all of these fantastic receivers they have.
Well, and the Argos continue to make moves. Defensive lineman Jordan Williams had been benched by the team. He's been released. They made a trade with Ottawa. Defensive back Mark Milton heads to Toronto as the Argos receive the 7th round pick from the Red Blacks as they send Ottawa defensive back Mark Milton. Ottawa definitely has been having some injuries in the secondary. Their 8th round pick started last week, so they were right down to it. And then the Argos end up making an interesting signing. Quarterback Max Duggan, who was the runner-up for the Heisman Trophy with TCU. He most recently played for the St. Louis Battlehawks in the UFL, and he did get drafted by the Chargers in the NFL. He has requested his release from the UFL to play in the CFL, and the Argos had his negotiation rights, so now he has signed with the Toronto Argonauts. This is interesting. I guess the Argos see him as a long-term developmental prospect, and we'll see what Max Duggan does with the Argos. Hopefully this works out with him, and we've got another great talent in the CFL.
Yeah, it's very interesting because why would you sign a guy if you expect Chad Kelly to come back soon? So that kind of makes me wonder if they are just going to shut Kelly down for the year and kind of see what happens in the off season. But yeah, he's it didn't work out for him in the NFL, and he had some, I guess, limited success, we'll say, in the UFL. So we'll have to see if he can translate his game to the CFL and see what he can do if he's given an opportunity in the next upcoming years.
Now, this has been really interesting. Now, obviously, the last 3 years, the Grey Cup has gone to the East Division. And it seemed like earlier this year, the East had the West's number when they were playing each other. But that seems to have turned around over the last few weeks. The West teams are winning the games over the East. It doesn't really matter until, the Grey Cup rolls around, and then all of a sudden the East team look like world beaters. But that's where the Ticats have sort of faltered a little bit. And they're trying to get right back on the, right side of things after getting crushed by the Riders. 29-9. I really thought the Ticats, and we've seen it a few times this season where a team going into the bye struggles for some reason. So you have to think that the Cats have to be fired up for the classic, the Labor Day game at Hamilton Stadium with the hated Argos coming to town. But do you almost look at like that? There's always talk about the team that hosts the division final. That sometimes coming off the bye and winning that game in the semifinal, they walk in with a lot of momentum. And I have to feel like the Argos, after popping 52 on the Lions last week, they might come into Hamilton with a little bit of swagger on Monday.
Oh, I don't doubt that they will. Their offense is going to be riding high, and Hamilton, sometimes I think the best thing that can happen going into a bye week is getting your ass kicked, because it gives you a lot to think of, and maybe you don't take that bye week off as much as possible as you might. Maybe you still have your head in your playbook or watching film while you go back home or whatever. But yeah, the Ticats, they need to win this game because, every week that Montreal is not able to get it done without Davis Alexander is another week that Hamilton needs to win so that they can just, extend that gap so that they can try to clinch that first round bye. But you make a good point. That first round bye isn't always great for teams. I know it's worked out for the Bombers the last 5 seasons when it comes to the West Final. But I don't know if it hasn't worked out as much in the Grey Cup games. So
and it didn't work for Montreal last year, and it didn't work for Toronto the year before.
Yeah.
It's kind of funny how that works.
Yeah, and I just think, in the playoffs, the team coming in, as an underdog, you just have because it's a win or you're done situation. I think you just have a lot less pressure on yourselves when you're an underdog because no one expects you to win, and everyone expects the home team to win come playoff time. So, it might just be easier for them to get a little bit more, excited for the game or what have you. But yeah, I think this one's going to be a really, really good game because both teams need a win in just different ways. The Argos need a win because, that small glimmer of getting back into the playoff hunt, if they don't win here, it's disappearing because BC is in that crossover spot right now. And, Toronto needs to get some wins. Same with Ottawa, but Ottawa doesn't have that chance this week. So we talk about the Argos.
Now, the Argos have won 2 out of the last 3 on Labor Day in Hamilton. The Ticats last year winning 31-28. And the game changer is number 19. It is Bo Levi Mitchell. He had his first game on Labor Day with the Ticats last year. Bo is a perfect 7-0 on Labor Day. He understands what Labor Day means in the home cities across the country. 6-0 as a Stampeder, 1-0 as a Tiger Cat. He's going to be fired up for this game on Monday.
Yeah, and he's a player who takes losses, I think, personally, and really wants to get back on the field and prove that was an anomaly.
You nailed it.
I nailed it. He their offense is kind of, I don't want to say sputtered, but it's not looked the same as it did for the first, let's say, third of the season because, either teams have figured out Kenny Lawler or, Kenny Lawler has kind of got a little bit quieter, and I know he's getting more double coverage and stuff like that, but, Hamilton needs to come out and fire it, and they need to find a way to get him involved again, whether that's moving him around so that it's not always the same, defensive looks that he's getting on the same side of the field or get him involved in other ways. But he's a playmaker, and he needs to get his hands on the football to be able to make those plays.
Well, and the Ticats, if they beat Toronto here and they beat Montreal next week, well, that goes a long way to making sure the East Final's in the hammer.
But that could actually be a really bad thing because then if for that long that you're going to have this playoff game clinched, that can lead to some, gradual slowdown, and let's not get people injured. Let's take and
well, that's happened 2 years in a row in the East because Montreal last year got up to that fast start. Toronto was 16-2, and look how that ended up for both of those teams.
I know it's such a weird. You want your team to win, the Riders 8-2. I love it when they win. I want them to go undefeated, but at the end of the day, it's like I want them to face some adversity so they don't just get complacent. So
last year for Winnipeg, they're 3-6, so they're basically playing for their lives the rest of the year. So when the playoffs roll around, I guess they were kind of used to it by that time.
Yeah,
man,
very fair.
And the record historically it's pretty lopsided for the Tiger Cats. 37 wins, 15 losses, and one tie between the double blue and the black and gold on Labor Day. And then we got the Battle of Alberta, which all of a sudden became a little bit more interesting, with the Edmonton Elks coming into this game having won 3 straight. But then the Stamps really beating Saskatchewan with some relative ease, especially in the second half where they shut out the team. Well, the Elks are now facing even a little bit more adversity as defensive lineman Robbie Smith and receiver Steven Dunbar Jr. have hit the 6-game injured list. I would say that those are pretty big losses for the Elks. Dunbar, probably the leader in that receiving core. A lot of CFL experience there. And then Robbie Smith, that's a ratio change, or that's a loss to have a Canadian starter on the defensive line be out for possibly the next 6 games. That's a rough loss for the Elks. Offensive lineman David Beard did participate in walkthrough day on Wednesday, so it's good to have the veteran back onto the lineup there. And then Jake Julian, who left to try out the NFL, has signed a deal with the Elks through 2027. An amazing punter. You know, for many, many years where the Raiders in the NFL sucked and the best part of their team was Sebastian Janikowski and Shane Leckler, the kickers. Yeah. Well, Jake Julian was kind of that last year. And now he's back with the Elks. I do wonder what happens to Cody Grace, who was great with the Stampeders for a few years, has had some great moments with the Elks this year, but Julian back into the fold for the green and gold. So I think they're going to be relying on him to flip the field a few times at McMahon Stadium on Monday.
Yeah, and honestly, it's huge to be able to flip the field position, and if they're able to cover those booming kicks that Julian is able to do, but his placement is actually really excellent too. Like it's not often that a CFL punter or kicker actually does get a legitimate chance down south. So he obviously has been very good at his job. And like you said, Cody Grace has too. You know, he hustled his ass down there a couple of weeks back and got that, punt recovery when, the other team was kind of just watching it bounce for a while. But I think he is hurt too, so it actually is good timing for Julian to get back in there, and the Elks really don't have to make, I guess, the decision right away. But obviously, when you sign Julian for a 3-year deal here, he's going to be the guy, and Cody Grace is not going to be the guy. So it will be interesting to see where he ends up. But special teams are huge. They're a third of the phases of the games, and you need your special teams clicking to win in the CFL.
Now there's sort of a flu-like illness affecting some members of the Calgary Stampeders, and one of them being quarterback Vernon Adams Jr. Apparently, Tevin Jones has been dealing with this. He's lost a bunch of weight, and he doesn't look himself at practice right now. If that happens to Vernon, if he has the same symptoms and the same sickness, this is bad news for the red and white. I don't want to overblow that, but they've talked that Tevin got hit pretty hard by this thing, and Tevin Jones was a member of the Elks last year, had the game of his life on Labor Day as the Elks won 35-20 in Calgary last year. So the Stamps are going to be back in black, and they're going to want to avenge last year's victory with a completely new team, 12 new starters on defense, a new quarterback, all that sort of stuff. But Dave Dickinson does not forget. And you know what? Mark Killam, a longtime member of the Calgary Stampeders, is now on the other sideline. That creates a lot of fun for here on Labor Day.
Yeah, and Dave Dickinson just kind of had his way with a couple former coaches of the Stamps in Saskatchewan. So he's been doing a pretty good job at taking on his former colleagues so far this season. Um, yeah, it's always an intense game on the Monday. Those black jerseys, they get me fired up watching it. I love the black. I miss those chrome helmets that they had. Like I wish they'd bring those back. Those were sick. But VA is gonna if he's able to play and having a sick being sick is not fun, especially when you have to try to, put all that exertion in when it comes to preparing for not even just physically on the field, but mentally. Like when you're sick, you don't want to think of anything other than just not being sick, right? So
He
it's
could be the old Michael Jordan flu game, though.
yeah, it could be, or it
Which
could
would be
be
wild.
any given Sunday puking on the stadium and then throwing a touchdown.
Was there a game? Was that the Riders, like they all had COVID?
Oh, yeah,
And they got
yeah,
smashed?
yeah, oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
and
this
yeah,
could go several ways. I'm sure.
yeah.
I know there's some good people on the Elks, but they're thinking like, let's hope VA's on the toilet like he just crushed some bad
Yeah.
Taco Bell or something.
Yeah, but luckily for them, they have a couple extra days here with the game being on Monday. So hopefully the virus has made its way to out of the locker room by then. But stuff like that, with people in there constantly, uh, you know, with the meetings, the offensive meetings, the quarterback meetings, like it could go everywhere, right? So we'll have to keep an eye on that.
Some more notes from Stampeder practice. Dominic Rhymes and Adrian Green were in jerseys, but not participating in practice. And defensive back Ben LaBrosse not practicing as well. Now, if we look at the historical Labor Day matchup between these two franchises, of course, Edmonton with a lot of success in CFL history. But recently, the tide has turned to Calgary. Especially, of course, when Bo was quarterback of the Stampeders. It doesn't get any closer than this, Sheldon. 31 wins, 31 losses, 1 tie. This one is going to break the tie between Edmonton and Calgary.
Yeah, and that's kind of bizarre because having a 50-50 split, with a road team having that many wins is, I think that would be pretty surprising. But yeah, Edmonton, they've had so long, being winners in this league, and I know it doesn't seem like that. It's been a while for Elks fans who are in the games now, but and yeah, that's really surprising with how good Calgary's teams have been too. Like there's a long time where those two were like the class of the West, and so that's very interesting. Very interesting.
Now, I kind of just compare the rosters. Calgary's got better receivers. The running backs are a bit of a wash, I would say. Rankin versus Mills. The defense, I think consistency
Calgary.
definitely goes to Calgary. So how does Edmonton go into Calgary and pull out the win? I do feel like this is a tall mountain to climb for the Elks. If they can string some really long drives together, which they can with Rankin and Cody Fajardo, pretty accurate, slice and dice up and down the field and keep Calgary off the field. This feels like a really bet the house on Calgary. Now, my wife's in the other room. I won't say that too loud, but and she is an Edmonton fan. But man, this feels like a pretty sure thing.
Yeah, I think we've seen a lot of sure things not actually happen that way this year.
Fair.
And yeah, I don't know. I think Edmonton, they're on a roll, and I think it just comes down to if they're able to protect Cody Fajardo, and if Cody is able to get the ball out of his hands quickly, and they can just like you said, just sustain drives, because the best way to stop Vernon Adams is to have him on the sidelines, and Cody, he's been the knock on him lately is that he's taking sacks, not throwing the ball away. And that's the type of thing that on the road against, Calgary's defense, you can't let that happen. So, for them to have success, it's all on Cody's shoulders and the receivers to catch the balls. They've had their share of drop issues this season too. So, Gittins needs to have his mitts on the ball, and, they just need to sustain drives and put points in. And Rankin, he's had so much success out of the backfield as a receiver, just on top of his rushing. So they need to find a way to still be able to do that.
The good VA, bad VA discussion, I think, has been put to bed. I think it's BS, but he has had games where he struggled. A 6 interception game a couple years ago against the Argos.
Yeah.
And I know that's with the BC Lions, but you know what? It's going to be that kind of collapse, I think, for the Elks to win. They've been able to pressure quarterbacks. They haven't been able to finish the job. So hopefully this illness doesn't affect VA too much, and he'll be well prepared heading into Labor Day. But here's the big difference between the two teams right now. Calgary 5-0 against the West. Now, of course, this is Calgary's first game against a West Division team that is not Winnipeg or Saskatchewan, right?
Correct.
Edmonton, though, 0-4 against the West. You got to beat the teams in your own division if you're going to want to make the playoffs. So, hey, you want adversity? Edmonton's got adversity, and sometimes Cody Fajardo, he gets up for those big moments, man. But those Edmonton receivers, we've seen some really costly drops this year. I think some inexperience is a factor there, but they need to play pretty darn clean to walk out with a victory on Monday.
Yeah, they got to play clean, and they got to keep it close, because if it's close, Cody has been known to be a gamer, and he's led quite a bit. Last drive comeback wins, just for the number of games he started, he's been able to do that quite often. So that's where the key to success is. You have to sustain drives, you have to keep it close, and you just have to match points, really, and then anything can happen in the last 3 minutes in the CFL.
Now, get your power rankings ready. We'll get to those, your power rankings heading into Labor Day. First, I just want to mention and talk a little bit about USports, because last week, wow, a 4 OT game between Western and Queens, where Western won 45-42. And did you see the Toronto Varsity Blues stats, Sheldon?
I didn't see them, but I heard about them on the 3 Down Nation podcast.
Scott Barnett, the quarterback, goes 32 of 39, 614 yards, and 4 touchdowns. That was a 42-23 win over Carleton. Receiver Chris Joseph for Scott Barnett, for Toronto, 19 catches, 310 yards. This is on Madden and choosing the same play every time.
It's crazy. I have heard, and they did say this on the podcast, that the stats, they're not sure if they're correct, because I guess USports is having a lot of problems with the stats. They went with Genius last year and were having issues again, and then they decided to go with a completely different company again this season. So I'm not sure if those are exactly correct. When I was listening to their podcast, they had different numbers. So it could be that they updated it and you saw that now. I don't know. But crazy. Regardless of what the stats were, that game was crazy. And I think it's the first time in the same week or at the same day, I'm not sure, that both Toronto teams have actually won a game. So that's crazy, given the length of time just that it's been possible to happen.
Wow. Like, yeah, this is stuff that, like, those numbers.
This is stuff that should be televised and not just behind a paywall. Like TSN, you have 5 channels. Sportsnet, you have 4 or 5 channels. There's no hockey on right now. Like, it'd be so easy to broadcast these games. Even just have them on Sportsnet Plus or TSN Plus, and then just show one game a week.
One game a week. Give us the highlights at halftime. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, it just seems like it's so easy, and this is one of the things that Luke Wilson has kind of been harping on, and I completely agree with him. Like, we need to be able to showcase, these future stars that we're going to be cheering in the CFL. That's a way to market and get some younger fans into this game, is by showing, who to look forward to getting drafted, and let's make a spectacle of the draft and blah, blah, blah. Off my soapbox.
So Ethan Dolby for Western, 28 carries, 147 yards, touchdowns, which is wild. But isn't this perfect, Sheldon? There's no Thursday night or Friday night CFL game this year. The Jays aren't playing on Thursday this week, but UBC is going to be hosting the Manitoba Bisons Thursday night. Wouldn't that be great to watch on TV? Kahari Jones, by the way, the offensive coordinator for the UBC Thunderbirds this season as well. So Canada West getting underway this weekend. It would be so awesome to be able to watch this stuff on TV.
100%. And even if you live in a city that has these games too, get out there and support it. I know I'm going to go to many more Rams games this year than I have in the past, just because it's another night of live football, and it's getting good. Like, the level of coaching is getting good. We're having players from USports get signed to NFL teams or get drafted by NFL teams, or maybe not drafted, but I think the level of play, the level of coaching, etc., has increased in USports, and it's time for us to support it, and time for us to try to get that platform a little bit bigger.
We are on the road to the 60th Vanier Cup in Regina, happening November 22nd. Sheldon, let's get to your CFL Power Rankings heading into Labor Day.
Well, here they are, and we say that they're my power rankings, but this week they really weren't my power rankings, because a listener of the show, Morgan Ladler, every week he always responds to my last week's power rankings with what he thinks should be the next power rankings. And
so you copied his homework?
Well, I didn't want to, because he always says, it's going to be different, and I looked at it and I just no, this is it. So Stampeders moved to number 1, Riders number 2, Ticats 3, Bombers 4. We have the Elks at 5. 3 games in a row, they're moving up. Argos at 6, Lions at 7, Redblacks at 8, and then the Alouettes are down at 9, because they just can't seem to get it working without Philpott, without Alexander, without Mac. It's just been a rough go for them.
The best part about Labor Day is that it seems like the slates are squeaky clean. Not literally, but it's like everybody is 0-0. It doesn't matter what the records were beforehand. It feels like playoffs. And I know it's hot as heck across Western Canada, so it doesn't have that playoff chill in the air quite yet, but man, Labor Day is here. We start on Sunday in Saskatchewan. The Riders 5.5 point favorites over the visiting Winnipeg Blue Bombers. Labor Day Monday, the Ticats 4.5 point favorites over the Argos. The over under 57.5 for that one. The Stampeders 7.5 point favorites at home against the Elks on Monday. I'm locking it in for the home team, Sheldon. Riders, Cats, Stamps. Who do you got?
Yeah, That's who I have too. I kept looking at it and wanting to pick one of the road teams because I think I went road teams 2 weeks ago. I went home teams last week, and that kind of bit me in the butt. And so, but this. I think home field advantage is just going to be huge this week in all the games, and so I think that's the way you got to go that way.
Hey, the Calgary Stampeders almost 29,000 last week against Edmonton. I'm hoping they can get to 30 this week, or against Saskatchewan. I'm hoping they can get to 30 this week against Edmonton. The CFL Podcast Fantasy League. I'm coming off a win against the Elks herd. You're coming off a win against Kayla from the Turf District this week. You mentioned you got BB Can Ryan. We might get the All Stamps versus the All Riders lineup, and I've got the Rouge, White, and Blue podcast. I'm just looking at my lineup right now. There's only 3 teams or 3 games. So that means we're kind of handcuffed when it comes to picking players. So I'm probably going to fiddle with this a little bit more, but I'm quickly going through mine. I'm going Stamps defense. Bo Levi Mitchell's my quarterback and captain. Dedrick Mills. Greg Bell as my running backs. Giovanni Robinson, the big 6'7" receiver for the Ticats. Hurdle and Jake Herslow for the Argos. Keep that hot streak going. And Del Duncan Busby for the Riders in the flex against the Bombers. I'm really just hoping for a red zone target for Duncan Busby on that one. What's your lineup looking like?
Yeah, like you said, I am against Ryan, and so he always picks all Stamps, so I'm going to pick all Riders, and it was tough. A lot of these players on the Riders are pretty expensive. So the Riders defense, obviously, Trevor Harris, my captain, and quarterback. I have AJ Ouellette and Mario Anderson, so we'll get all the rushing for the Riders. And then I have Keyshawn Johnson, Dante Myers, and like you, my flex is Del Duncan Busby.
Labor Day is here. It's one of my favorite weekends every year, no matter what. That's week 13 of the CFL season. You can rate, review, and subscribe to Two and Out in your favorite podcatcher. You can support the show on Patreon by visiting the website, twoandout.ca, and always check us out on YouTube. We're going to get to 1,200 subs this weekend. So wherever you're going to CFL games, travel safe, stay safe, and we'll wrap up Labor Day on Monday. Have a good one.
The Two and Out CFL podcast is written, produced, and hosted by Travis Currah and co-hosted by Sheldon Jones. Subscribe to Two and Out on all major podcast platforms and YouTube to keep up to date with future shows.